Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Belgian Football Podcast. My name's Scott Coyne, and I'll be your host for this episode. And joining me to chew over the week in Belgian football, the week that is Matchday 6 in the Pro League and Matchday 3 in the Challenger Pro League, is our very own indispensable Mr. Joris Beck.
How are you doing? I'm fine. Genk won. Quite some warm weather, not only here but also I saw in Belgium in the heat waves. There actually were breaks in all the Sunday games. At least I do not know about the Saturday games, but I would not be surprised if also the case. So, yeah, enjoying the last bits of summer now we can.
Yeah, hopefully it isn't the last bits. You're right, the weather was generally quite good across Belgium this weekend. Wasn't so good where I'm based in Scotland, but we accept that horse is bolted for us now. Anything we get that's good from now on is absolutely a bonus. And as you were saying, no action from your side, Genk, last weekend because of postponed fixtures due to European games. More on Europe in a little bit. But we did see your side in action this weekend. We will jump into this as we usually do with a score roundup. Joris' side, Genk, won. They got 3 points. They beat Westerlo 1-0. Mechelen and Charleroi served up 7 goals, finishing 5-2 to Mechelen. Beerschot and Dender finished 2-1 to Dender. Leuven beat Standard 2-0 in the first of the weekend's 2 big derbies, the Bruges derby. Club Bruges won convincingly 3-0 against Cercle. Ghent and Antwerp finished 1 each in a quite eventful game. The other big derby of the weekend finished goalless, but don't let that put you off, everybody. It was actually a very, very good game. We'll get to that shortly. Finishing 0-0 between Union and Anderlecht, and Kortrijk and Sint-Truiden finished a goal apiece. So I thought, Joris, since your side weren't playing last week, we would talk about your side first. Genk 1, Westerlo 0. 3 wins on the bounce now for your side. Are Genk beginning to find their feet?
Difficult to judge on the basis of this performance. At least it wasn't great. It wasn't bad. I'm not saying it was, but wasn't great. Didn't create much. Got a bit lucky with the way they finally did find the net. At least for the time being, I guess I'll condone it and look at the results a little more. But I hope the level of performance increases a little bit again. But yeah, first time they win 3 on the bounce, like you said, first time since January 2023. About this game, actually not that much, I guess. Sadelberger scoring his first senior goal, and that's after coming on, being on the pitch for right around 40 seconds, 38, I believe it was. Not with his first touch of the ball, as many media have reported, but he actually hit the ball towards Bolat at the first try, where it then ricocheted, and I think Bonsoba had an attempt first, and that was blocked as well. And then he could put it in with his second touch of the ball. Also, I'm still hoping for a game where Genk actually are cruising to victory, because that has just not happened. The last 9 games they have won, they won one with only 1 goal difference, which shows, there's still some. That's the sign that there's still a lot of things to improve as well. Still, of course, there has been a 4-3. Now it's a 1-0. It has been a 3-2. I mean, it has been taking all kinds of forms, but always only 1 goal difference. So that is a bit worrying. Inside, okay, it's better to have those wins, of course, than in many other seasons. This game would have been ending at 0-0, which now easily could have been the case as well, if not for that Bolat mistake. I mean, I'm happy with this few statistical things going Genk's way this week. Also, clean sheet, never bad. Didn't give away much, which basically brings me to Westerlo in a quite natural way as well. With 0 shots on target throughout the whole game. So, yeah, okay, then you're not going to score a goal, indeed. Not completely the worst timing to meet Westerlo as well, of course, with the news leaking that Cessin was leaving Westerlo at the day of the game. So like at least he was not there anymore, and Westerlo doesn't have any replacement for him yet. I'm not sure if they will still go for that, but either way, for this game, he was not there. And of course, Madsen is also, well, he has left. It's still new, relatively new for them, so, and arguably their best player. So, yeah, that they have to adjust a bit to that, which they did quite well. I mean, Timmy Simons actually has changed his approach a bit, and yeah, was a bit more defensive, and that did work out quite well. Didn't create much, but really didn't give away much. As Genk also only had 2 shots on target, if I'm not mistaken, as well. More random, weird set things are the set pieces stats in this game. Genk, nil corners, 0. Zilch. Westerlo only 1 as well, so like it's not at either side. It's creating much there. On the other hand, of course, Genk had a few set pieces in the forms of free kicks around the box, though, which can be a bit good replacement of that. Ultimately, it was one of those that forced Bolat to his mistake, if you can say that. But yeah, so Sattelberger scoring after 40 seconds. At the same time as Sattelberger came on the pitch, Sidorchuk on the other side also made an appearance, and he also made it to the statistics very early, because after 2 minutes, so right after the goal, he already got a yellow card as well. So I found that a bit weird, very random and not very useful statistic, but quite funny. Yeah, at least they definitely had some impact on the game, one way or another. But yeah, and honorable mention, I guess, or shout outs, I guess, to Bonsoba, who it hasn't been always the best performing player. I know the expectations have been high, and I'm not sure if he's ready to start a game, but in this game, he really had a really good substitute appearance, also forcing that free kick that led to that goal. And apart from that, also a few more good actions. Just a good sub appearance. I think that's the role for him now, best suited for him right now. But that also could be good for him in his player development as well. When the opponents are already a little bit more tired, and we all know he can dribble, so that maybe he can have a bigger impact.
Torsten Fink was saying after this game that he felt they played a top match, which I thought was slightly odd. Watching the game, I felt it was going to be one of those games where nobody was going to score either unless there was a gaff, which we got through Sinambola in the end, or a bit of brilliance, which it was the sort of game where it didn't look like it was going to come. So I'm not sure if I was watching a different game to the one that Torsten Fink was watching. But to be fair, your side could conceivably be top of the table if they'd gotten points from the postponed game as well against Anderlecht, which is obviously to be rescheduled. So I suppose there are plenty of positives, even if there is a feeling, I mean, certainly in my part, that, you know, your side aren't necessarily performing as well as they could kind of quite yet. But yeah, 3 wins in the bounce now is pretty good. Going and a reasonable start to the first kind of little period at the start of the season for your side. I think Westerlo seemed to, I mean, obviously they've lost Lucas Stassen now. That happened very, very quickly. I understand the interest was there, but, you know, it didn't materialise into anything serious until, as you were saying, really shortly before this game. In fact, it was a bit of a race to the finish line to kind of complete that deal. There was a doubt as to whether they'd be able to complete the medical and even get the paperwork done on time, but they did. They broke their sweat and got it done, and he's left for a very good fee, a fee that obviously Westerlo can't turn down. Difficult because he's started the season really strongly for them, and as you were saying, they've lost Nicholas Madsen now as well, who again was kind of quite important to them. So I suppose it's no surprise that the output has dropped this weekend. And even Timmy Simons afterwards acknowledging that directly, he was saying that he thought they lacked intensity. intensity, and if you lack intensity, then your output is going to drop. So I think all to be expected. Speaking of expected, or rather the unexpected in many ways, the game at the Actor de Caserne, Mechelen and Charleroi finished 5-2 to the home side. A game probably characterised by being littered with mistakes, in certainly in the opening half hour or so, and all of the mistakes pretty much punished with goals as well. Slightly bizarre game in a few ways. What did you make of this one? Because it was pretty eventful.
It definitely was. I mean, 7 goals, that's on its own is already a sign that it was eventful. But the way the goals fell as well, indeed. Comedy capers at times at both ends. Especially in that first half. Yeah, and like, Charleroi will feel a bit like, well, they didn't really deserve a 5-2 battering here. And there is an argument to make for that as well if you look at all the statistics. And which brings me back to Mechelen as well immediately. Like, they were very efficient in this game, scoring 5 out of their 7 shots on target, also hitting the bar still another time. So they really made the most out of the opportunities. I believe Charleroi even had a higher expected goals even at the end of the game, because some of those goals from Mechelen were also strikes from distance that of course have a lower rate and are quality on their own, in their own right, I guess. But for Mechelen, it's of course it's also their first home win of the season. Also 2 wins in a row now, much needed. But now they're well underway for the season. Van den Ende catching an injury again already as well. I don't know if it's anything serious, but it's anyway not a good sign. Another injury at the back for Mechelen. They seem to be struggling with that a little bit. And Raman, of course, I think I'm not sure if we talked about it last week already, but he came in last week at least at Mechelen and came on as a substitute immediately and scored. Definitely a good start for him at Mechelen. To kill the game off as well. It was 4-2, but given all these things and all the mistakes and Charleroi actually having a lot of shots, I think you might have the right number of shots. I personally don't, but I believe it was close to 30 in the end. There's not that they were all that dangerous necessarily, but they definitely did not give up and tried their luck. But on Charleroi then, a little bit worrying, I guess. Like, a good thing first, maybe. Heijmans scored again with a penalty, granted, but he's now the top scorer in the league alone. He was already together with Tolu, but he did not manage to score last Friday. But he also scored 5 of their 8 goals in total. And there are only 3 players for them that have scored for them this season so far. Which is less than Mechelen actually had in this game. For example, they had 4 players scoring in this game, so that's on longer term could be still a worry. And well, I guess it still reads into our how we perceive Charleroi and who is going to score the goals. Luckily, Heijmans is doing it at the moment, but if something were to happen to him, they have a massive issue again. And also, let's see if he can keep on going with that form. That's also not a given, of course. Missing also noted down Charleroi missing the chance to go top actually as well after if they would have won this game. That's that would have been something, but it wasn't to be this week.
Yeah, I think the thing that makes things even more complicated for Charleroi now is that we know that Yusuf Badji has left the building as well. So even though Dan Heymans, Dan the man, as we refer to him sometimes, is the main man at the moment and is doing the business, that's one less striker there who could obviously take some of that burden on. And you just wonder whether they feel the need to do something about that before the window closes at the end of this week. Depending when you're listening to this episode, it may already have closed, so we may already know the answer to that. Something that we may come back to on the next regular episode. But that's an interesting one to kind of keep an eye on. Rick DeMille afterwards saying that there were just simply too many mistakes, as I was saying at the beginning. Definitely a game littered with mistakes, but from Charleroi perspective, almost every mistake was giving away goals, and also alluding to sort of a general lack of concentration as well at kind of key moments, not being at the right level. And if you're going to do that, you're not going to get anything in a game. Conversely, Besnik Hazy saying he hopes that this is a springboard for a bit more confidence now. We'll see whether that's the case. Rahman, interestingly, scoring for his seventh Belgian club now, getting his goal there on his home debut for Mechelen. 17 minutes he got last weekend, but a little bit longer this weekend, and his first goal at home is scoring for his seventh Belgian club, which is kind of quite something in itself, I suppose. I wanted to ask you about the Nicolas Storm factor, because he was very good this weekend. Even aside from his two goals, he was looking fitter and sharper and just kind of up for it. And we've not really spoke about him in any great detail, other than alluding to the fact that he's not really been in the mix much under Besnik Hazy. There have been some injury issues and he's not been fully fit, but we know how good he is offensively and how important a player he can be to them. Do you think there's a greater role for him going forward now in some ways? Because the issue of who's going to score the goals at Mechelen, while that may have been addressed somewhat with bringing Rahman in, do you think they're still going to need somebody like Storm contributing regularly, which we know he can do, on top of other big hitters there like Kieran Marabti and Rob Scouse?
You already named a few there, so Storm might be able to do it. He already has almost matched his tally of both last season and this and 2 seasons ago combined, of course. So whether he can actually do it, we'll see. I know he has done it in the past, but it's still to see. It remains to be seen if those were the flukes or the last 2 seasons. But I think Mechelen have a few of those players, and if any of those can do that on a regular basis, it would be good. Or, of course, which is the most likely to happen, that they divide it a bit among each other. On the other hand, Rahman, he's not a real. I know he scored a goal here, and he has that name of a goal scorer, but I do not get where he gets that. He's never really scored that many in a season, but. It is a good pickup for them, most likely on the short term. I think up front it looks a bit brighter for Mechelen now anyway, to at least have some more options. Eventually, probably some of those players will score like they have done in this game, actually.
Yeah, there's a few interesting questions surrounding Mechelen at the moment. I think the Rahman situation is quite an interesting one. Like you say, there's a certain reputation there that doesn't always match up to the reality, and that's kind of how I felt about that signing when I heard that had been kind of confirmed. I thought it was understandable, but also equally odd at the same time. Still a possibility, I think, that they might bring in somebody at the back as well. I know they do have some worries still there for various reasons. Obviously, the situation with Van Housen and Van Kliempoet isn't ideal either. So I wouldn't be entirely surprised if somebody didn't come in on some kind of short-term loan for across the back line. Jose Marsa actually... speaking of gaffes and mistakes, was responsible for a bit of a howler this weekend in this game as well that led directly to one of Charleroi goals. And he's not looked completely comfortable yet. So I don't know whether that's an issue of, he's still struggling to settle, or whether there's a bit more behind that. But that might be something they look to try and address in the remaining few days of the window. Moving on to a couple of sides who are having... contrasting fortunes, shall we say, who met at the Olympisch Kiel Beerschot Dender, which finished 2-1 to Dender. The scoreline kind of reflecting the contrasting results of the two sides generally. Beerschot starting this game really poorly, Joris, and having to chase it after only 12 minutes, finding themselves 2 goals down.
Yeah, that's not a great start of a game, of course, and that makes it difficult to get any points. And yeah, they didn't. Indeed, they did recover a little bit, I guess, but that not enough. It was not enough. I can say that, I guess. About this game, Beerschot getting another penalty against them, that also doesn't help. Third game in a row. That complicates your whole all your plans in the game, I guess. Anyways, and from Beerschot's side, also just know it now. Like it was a battle between. It's actually for both sides a battle between Thibaut Verlinde and his dad, who is goalkeeper. Well, used to be goalkeeper at Club Brugge, famously, of course, but also is at the moment goalkeeper coach at Dender. So the last one won, and I mean, well, I'm curious if there was any kind of bet between them before this game. Like usually such things happen. I didn't hear anything of it, but I would not be surprised. It wasn't enough. That these two. I also have to say these 3 penalties, all 3 of them, like I can see they're a bit severe to concede all 3 of them in this streak, of course. I think regardless of the penalty, they didn't deserve more out of this game. But yeah, of course, they could have if it would not have happened. And then they go top, which is a surprise. I had written down go top for a day, but actually, even after Sunday's games, they stay on top. Not alone anymore, but still on goal difference they are. And thereby also, of course, increasing the gap with the more problematic positions, which is something I will nuance later on, though. I do think, though, they have a really decent first 11, and looks like they also have a game plan so far. Whether it's always will work as well as it did this time, I'm not sure. I'm still a bit worried about the depth in that squad, if that will not haunt them later on in the season as well. You could see they should have killed the game probably before the 2-1, but after that, again, quite a natural flow of a game. But still, Beerschot were pushing a little more, and they still created a few chances on the counter, a few big chances even, but nonetheless, I'm not convinced that bench is strong enough, because they made a few changes as well, a bit more defensive changes as well. I'm not sure if that was the right approach, although albeit understandable, but they got away with it without that many issues in the end in this game. But against other opponents, that might not work out all the time. It's with all due respect to the current Beerschot side, but and Dirk Kuyt, his position is now definitely in peril, for sure.
Yeah, quite a few questions surrounding this game. Obviously, Dender now, you're saying top, 11 out of 18 points. So far, so good. And they will keep going like that. This is our weekly opportunity to put the big caveat out there that we've been underlining a lot. It's still very early days. And despite them doing very well at the moment, Dender, then, that's not necessarily a reflection on the way this is going to go. And you're right to highlight, it's a long season. And they will take the points where they can get them. This is exactly the sort of fixture I think, that they would have identified as one where it's important for them to get something much like the St Truden fixture recently as well. So I think internally they will be delighted with the way things are going at the moment, because as you were saying, from an injury perspective, they're also managing to stay clear at the moment as well. Vincent Everard afterwards saying that we absolutely deserved the win. That was kind of his take on the weekend, and didn't have much more to say than that, which I can understand. Dirk Kuyt, on the other hand, the vultures are circling to a certain extent now. Obviously, they're struggling. We've known this. Losing 5 of their opening 6, still winless. Only very, very minor improvements in certain areas, really. Nothing to suggest that they're ready to kind of be revitalised in any sense yet. And I thought his approach to the post-match presser was quite interesting, and it did kind of prove to me, okay, he's now feeling the pressure a little bit himself. He's been talking a lot about referee and VAR over the last couple of weeks, probably rightly so. He was talking about it again this weekend, which I can understand. But there was one particular thing he said that stood out to me, Joris. He said, we now have a feeling that some people are against us. And I thought, is this part of the VAR and refereeing rant, or is he setting himself up for a Jose Mourinho style us against them scenario to see how that, does the squad get a positive response out of that? The thing about that is, I don't know how you feel, I'm sure you're going to tell me here, coaches who go down that road psychologically, very often that does not work.
I agree. There's not much to add here. Like, I'm vehemently against that, but it's an approach, and sometimes it works on the short term, and and that might be all they need, of course. But I mean, Mourinho built a career out of it, and you can't argue with his career. He has done well. You can say a lot about the person, and about his managing styles, but it worked for him. But I'm not sure. Even for him, it's actually not working anymore, it seems. And that's an exception. And I hope it also actually stays like that as well a bit, because we don't need even more negativity around society, and specifically in football, I guess, as well. I know I'm part and parcel of that myself as well, unfortunately. But
yeah, I think we're all guilty of that sometimes, definitely. I think he's just. I got the feeling that he was kind of, trying some smoke screens, Dirk Kuyt, this weekend. But smoke screens that definitely proved to me that he's now starting to feel the pressure himself a little bit. It looks like they're now going to lose Simeon Miches as well, which is a bit of a sore one for them, because he's actually been one of their better players, and a player who's been producing something. So that's definitely problematic for them as well. We know there are a couple of players coming in on loan as well. The Saudi owners have been working their own contacts to help Beershot out. They're yet to be finalised, but that's going to happen as well. So we don't know whether they're going to have an impact or not yet. We'll see what happens there. But yeah, they definitely cannot afford to start games like they did this weekend, considering the way that they're playing. Speaking of sides, having contrasting fortunes in a way, the next game is similar to a certain extent. Leuven beating Standard 2-0 this weekend. Leuven remaining undefeated in their opening 6 games. Not something I thought 6 weeks in that I would be saying. And I know we've been kind of hinting at them improving, and they definitely are improving offensively. They've overhauled their squad to a reasonable extent. They've brought in some reasonable names, and they do just look and feel like a different side now. They carry that offensive threat, even without Michael Byron getting much game time at all, really, at the moment. Conan Hendry being the main man. Oscar Garcia this weekend saying that he felt they completely controlled the game, and that they did well, and that he was very happy. And then you have, of course, his counterpart Ivan Leko, who wasn't obviously wanting to hang around too long for the press conference, saying that Leuven were better in absolutely every department, and he felt that Standard had lost their fighting spirit a little bit, which is a bit of a worry, because Ivan Leko is, as I was saying in the opening 2 or 3 weeks, he'd been cultivating this thing about a team spirit that was obviously, greater than the sum of its parts. And I suppose the worry for him now is, has that spirit dissipated again a little bit, because we appear to have returned to the Standard of old and the side that are just very, very painful to watch.
Ooh, yeah, that was not a good one for Standard fans, I'm sure. Definitely important for them to get that back, like you mentioned. another side with 0 shots on target. Not the only one. Like Westerlo already had it this weekend as well. And yeah, not that much to say about them. Honestly, they didn't create much. Obviously with 0 shots on target, but not only that, Ipolo, I feel he should have done better on that first goal. Although it went in nicely, of course, the finish was good, but from that angle, it shouldn't go in. And the other fact from Standard is also just like more of a, well, in one way funny one, in the other way, like, why did nothing happen here with Fossey holding the ball, which, well, to my eye at least, clearly was not out of yet. So, like, should not that not just have been a penalty or anything? But okay. Luckily for it wasn't, it didn't change anything in the outcome of the game ultimately. But yeah, that was quite the weirdest action I had seen in a while. But I have to admit, this weekend there were a few actions. That were a clear brain fart from him as well. Like thinking the ball was out, trying to catch it, and I mean, well, it wasn't yet. So why is there no penalty? Especially since they actually have watched at it. I'm flabbergasted. What the hell has been discussed there? Pardon my French there, but okay. Ultimately, it did not matter. I've already touched on that goal from N3, which is an important one, and you could see it of course as well. But first goal for Leuven, and well, mind you, he has been there for a year, so it was his first goal in 1.5 years. I think since March 23. So yeah, quite literally 1.5. That should be good for him, and of course for Leuven as well. Still struggling a little bit with scoring, despite indeed having a few more options and having an overhaulder. So it's less of an issue than it was before. On that, they also, of course, loaned out Nsingi to Dunkirk, which is an interesting one. Not the biggest fan of him, but he was one of the offensive players who still could do something in a game, at least in a sense of bringing it alive. He was not producing the goods enough, obviously, but interesting that they let him go. But okay, I guess they brought in a few players indeed, so they are a bit stacked somehow, even as it looks like at the moment. But good game from them. Didn't give away much. Created a few. Created enough to justify this win for sure. And only thing also, again, like after play things, now Schrijver's also going off after only 4 minutes. It was a very early change anyway. Banzuzi played a good game after as a substitute for him though. So with their squad, I wouldn't say that would be an issue at the moment. But yeah, if they contract a few more injuries, that could still build, of course, as well. Again, with Schrijvers, I haven't gotten an injury update. I don't know if there's anything on that. But if you have to leave that early on the game, it's usually not a good sign. But okay, of course, there is an international break coming, so maybe things are not as bad as they seem for him, and I hope so.
Yeah, you would hope the timing of that, in a way, is kind of ideal, and that injury isn't as bad for him as perhaps it kind of could be. We were talking a little bit about other things going on at Leuven, particularly with the squad being overhauled, and of course the technical director at Leuven now is Jorge Kispregi, who did an excellent job at Beerschot last year before leaving in the summer. He's been responsible for bringing in a lot of these players and shifting this side from one that seemed to be, afraid to go forward and blunt for a lot of last season to being one that has some tools now that gives it a chance in games. And the early indications are, I think, that already he's doing kind of quite a good job. One of the players, of course, who did come in under his watch is former Standard player William Balakwisha, of course, who had some spicy comments post-match. He said that he'd been looking forward to getting revenge on Standard, his old side, and that the only thing he regretted was not scoring in this game this weekend. So not a lot of love lost between William Balakwisha and his old side at Standard. Derby klaxon, everybody. We had 2 derbies this weekend. The first one was the Bruges derby, the first Bruges derby of the season. Club against Circle at the Jan Breidel, of course. Club running out convincing 3-0 winners. Club really dominant this weekend, Joris. So much space. What can I say? I mean, Skov Olsen and Solis having a real field day, and Circle's midfield really struggling to get a grip on the game here as well. Interestingly, Circle have. We know that Club have been dominant in this fixture, historically speaking, quite shockingly so. But Circle have now won only one of the last 23 away derbies as the away side at the Jan Breidel, which in itself is quite an extraordinary figure. But yeah, a game that was difficult to watch for everybody connected with Circle this weekend, because they just, despite having, to be fair, they did have 3 or 4 quite good half chances, I think, that they could have made something of. But generally speaking, when Club are playing at the level they played at this weekend, there aren't many sides that are going to be able to touch them when they're playing like that.
Yeah, exactly. Cercle Brugge only had a few moments, I think, at crucial points in the game, though, at the beginning of both halves. If they would have done anything with those chances, either they could have been in front or reduced the scoreline, and maybe the second half would have looked a bit different. As we do know that Brugge, still has a bit of two faces at times in games, and when having a lead and when then conceding. They don't always recover well on that. But they didn't have to prove that this time. Very well deserved win. First derby win, first derby with a winner, even in 6 tries, if I'm not mistaken. It could be 5 as well, but I think it's 6. Definitely a well-deserved one. 2 goals chopped off. Doesn't matter, just play on and back 3 other ones and take it home. And they would have, they could have easily have scored more as well. Like probably the one Cercle Brugge player at a reasonably good level outside of one complete misreading of the game was Warleson. That unfortunately did not prevent them from being actually, with not literally but factually chanceless, also not correct, not the correct wording there, but just that there was no one going to stop Brugge on this day, and the way Cercle Brugge, they were defending for Club Brugge, set pieces really paying off. Clearly they had a plan. I have to also pull back to Cercle as well, though. They had a plan, and that it looked like they had a few plans, because just of the way the players lined up as well. Often, I think on the first goal, actually, there were a few players around the 16-meter box that also actually, were ready to shoot. I guess Skov Olsen and Solis, if I'm not mistaken. That ultimately they went for the variation that they've tried 3 times, and 3 times successfully, to find Nilsson at the far at the second post to head the ball back in. Third time it worked out. Well, actually it had worked out before, but it was then they were lucky that it was offside. That's one of Van Aken attempt, but that's. The defending there was a bit shocking, and the defense is really worried, certainly increasingly. So now, okay, of course, it was not the same defense. There were only 3 players that actually started this game against Wisla Krakow. There's a second leg there, since they had already basically secured the group stages in you can't call it group stage anymore, of course, but the league stage in Europe. But they even still managed to make that one a bit tight and conceded 4. So that's 7 goals conceded in a matter of 4 days. Yeah, that is, regardless who is playing, that's never something you want to see as a manager. And that's definitely a thing. Yeah, I also had to note down one win only for them in the last 23 outings to Club. Staggering stats. Haven't won in a while again as well, even though they hadn't lost in a while as well, since most of them have been draws lately. That I've said it before, but I'll say it again, and I've said it here even already as well. Like, that defense is at the moment is too much weakened by injuries and transfers. That I feel might make for a difficult season for them in combination, specifically as well, of course, with European games and a more busy schedule. Muslic already admitting as well that he was really happy with the international break and we're the beginning of September, and still I understand it, but yeah, after having such a long European road already and to get where they are at the moment, yeah, then they will have to pick up form quickly to I think at the moment there's 14th. Not that we should read too much in that yet, but they're not in a good position, and they will need to find a way find a way to crawl out of that in a busy schedule while having a busy schedule.
Yeah, obviously they've lost big Jesper Dahlen now, and you do wonder about that influence in the back line there, because he was a huge influence, I think, and a really big, clear communicator. And he, goals conceded over the last week, like you say, aside, I think, that's a presence they will miss. You were right to point out Varlason, who generally had a very good game. There was one moment, I should tell listeners this, when we were watching the game, I complimented Varlason's reading of the game to Ben and Joris. I said his reading of the game is so underrated. He often sees things, a split second ahead of them happening, but on one occasion his reading of the game was almost a misreading of the game, and he came flying out and was responsible effectively for missing the ball and the tackle that he was hoping to make, and thankfully he got out of jail on that one, which was quite funny considering it happened only a few minutes after I'd complimented his previous reading of the game. Hans, while we're still in circle, Joris, Hans van der Bruggen was quite scathing after the European result recently as well, saying that their concentration levels weren't what they should be at. He was talking about my reference to there being so much space available to Club Brugge in this game and them really stretching circle. He said that Club were able to find too much space, far too much, too often, and that Circle were too late to close the space throughout the game, and that's really where the game was lost. They were able to exploit that, but a real spacewalk for Club, and Nicky Hine understandably delighted, describing it as mostly the perfect game. I think he was really pleased with the fact, as he said, they kept pushing right to the end as well. They didn't take their foot off the pedal even when the game was won, which is obviously particularly important in a derby as well, for a whole host of reasons. And I don't know, like you say, they're a bit up and down at times. Club, are they beginning to find their feet a little bit? That's obviously a question we'll find out in the coming weeks now. But that sort of upturn in intensity throughout a game, rather just in phases of games, seems to be starting a little bit now. So that's something to kind of keep an eye on there. Moving on to another big game this weekend, a game that was actually packed with incident, a game that saw 3 disallowed goals, all for the same side, and a missed penalty for Ghent, which could have seen them win it in the end, of course. The game at the Planet Group Arena between Ghent and Antwerp finishing 1 apiece, packed with drama, and a very decent game, Joris.
Yeah, potentially the game of the weekend, I would still say, because of how many events happened and then were chopped off it as well, of course. But really good game from both sides. Partially through the heat, maybe as well. Like it was quite end to end, that really, attack one attack after another from one side to the other, and then the other side after if they managed to get out of the situation. What I did notice though is like the rising discontent with both Gudjonsson and Max Dean at Ghent. Gudjonsson already, of course, he didn't help his case after missing a penalty, but even before that, there was already a lot of whistling of the own player and so on going on. So he's definitely not at the level that the Ghent supporters want at the moment, which I can understand. I can't understand. I never understand people whistling at their own players, but I can understand them not happy with players, and especially with strikers. I have some experience with that in the recent years. Vaccine, okay, I think there's less of a thing yet, but that's more of a personal thing. I'm not sure if he's up to the level at the moment. Maybe he will get there, but yeah, I do feel like they really lost a lot of their attacking prowess, which is not a surprise. They lost a lot of players, but I also feel like they didn't necessarily bring in the right players to replace some of those players. We also now know since last episode already that Hong indeed went out still to Mainz, so they're one of their last remaining creative players. Higher on the pitch at least. That's interesting. Still, also no win against Antwerp for them at home. That's been 24 years now. So that's, I think, a stat that I've been using yearly or year on year, and probably a few times a year. Although, I don't think so. Just year on year, because they haven't played in the same playoffs since we started the podcast. But yeah, they had. Okay, we can't not mention that rocket of a goal from Kums, though. That was an amazing strike. One of the goals of the weekend, and probably even this for the weekend. I'm quite sure I can say the goal of the weekend. Most likely, also one of the season, even as well, might come in the highlight reels at some point. But for Antwerp, then 3 disallowed goals, of course. Unfortunately for them, all of them correctly, I guess. There is a bit of discussion possible for the Janssen one, I guess. But even the Rook said, okay, I guess that's a bit of a... Well, I guess the Rook would not want it, but he said it was one of those in a gray zone. Yeah, I guess so. So then that it feels a bit weird that it's disallowed. That and in pre-VAR times, it would not have happened. The Gent being very lucky with some of those disallowed goals, though, because actually with all of them, they're all quite tight. Gent missing that penalty, so both sides had a claim that victory that way, of course, and they didn't take it, which I guess in conclusion means both sides really have missed their starts in the league now with 7 points out of the possible 18. In Antwerp's case, in Gent's case, 7 out of 15. So okay, a little bit hesitation there still maybe, or they can wait a little more there. But lucky for them, a lot of teams have, and no one is really running away yet. There's only 4 points difference between them and the top of the league at the moment as well. Still,
yeah, I think from Antwerp's perspective, it's an interesting one because Jonas de Rock was talking about he was quite happy with how dangerous his side looked in the game as he described it. And I suppose that's quite important for them because we've been talking over the last couple of weeks in relation to Antwerp and saying the thing is they're actually not playing too badly. The quality of the football is pretty decent without them managing to kind of get the points that they would like in return. So that frustration is kind of still there. He was certainly frustrated with having the 3 goals chopped off, particularly with Janssen's one. He did go as far as to say that he thought that was highly debatable because of the nature of it. I thought the first one, Kirk's first one that had that lovely finish, that was a beautiful goal. That wasn't. I was kind of quite disappointed to see that chopped off because the whole move was lovely actually. Really nice bit of football. So I think Jonas de Rock will go away from it and see it probably as an okayish point in the end, despite the frustrations in various ways around the fringes. From a Ghent perspective, I think Wouter Franken talking about the need to seize their moments more, which is probably something we could say on a permanent basis in a way about Ghent. But you do get the feeling with Rankin that he's just desperate for the window to close now. He did hint very heavily that there are players in his squad at the moment who are not playing at the level that they can and should be playing at. The concentration's not there. So he was hinting heavily that there are a number of players in there whose minds are elsewhere. And again, depending when you're listening to this week's episode, the scenario may have changed at Ghent as well. Some of those players may have left the building. It's an interesting one that I think he's just desperate for the window to close so that, those players can kind of focus on, as he was saying, seizing those moments. Speaking of seizing moments, second derby klaxon, everybody. The Brussels derby, which was also probably, as Joris was saying, will run Ghent Antwerp for being the best game in terms of the quality of the football over the weekend, and it finished 0-0. A really, really good 0-0. I really enjoyed this game, Joris. I thought it was played at a really good tempo. Really enjoyed the duelling. We know that Belgian football has a lot of duelling going on across it. It's one of the great characteristics of the game in Belgium, and this game really exemplified that. It was a great watch, I thought. Union playing a really strong game, dictating the game for the majority of it. A game that had, in a weekend of you might say, strange and controversial refereeing decisions, a particular penalty award in this game for Union, we're going to touch on here because it is so controversial. The penalty being awarded, of course, against Zanka. Kevin Rodriguez missing the penalty in slightly comical fashion, one that probably won't be forgotten for a little while. Just generally a good weekend for Union, and I'm sure we're going to touch on Anderlecht and try and put a new spin on this narrative that seems to just go on and on and on and on.
Which narrative are you talking about? Okay. I actually personally don't feel like going that way anyway this week. My opinion hasn't changed anyway, and it is increasingly followed. I guess that's all we can say at the moment. You can still refer to that if you want, but I don't feel to want to waste too much words on the position of the manager there anymore. But for Union, probably like Sadiki mentioned in his post-match interview, probably their best game of the season, despite them not winning. Hard to disagree with that, I think. But also, their third 0-0 in 6 games already as well, which in its own right more or less gives away where their issues at the moment at least still lie. The big question is, of course, then will one of the reinforcements they have made explode later on still, or will the new man Ivanovic be the solution for their scoring issues? Because defensively, like I touched on last week, they didn't give away much. In this game, maybe they gave away a little bit more, but they also, because they were a bit more attacking and they created a bit more, admittedly, Kozmans hasn't had that much to do himself either. So, but yeah, I actually also don't really want to talk too much about that penalty, except that was probably the worst penalty I've ever seen. Like, at least, like I also said it in the WhatsApp. At least not like when the player is still on his feet, not sliding away like a Beckham did, and some others. Okay, that's unfortunate, and it's a really bad penalty. But you can't really do much about it once you slide, but once you slip. But yeah. That just trying to do a Panenka, and then like the goalkeeper was even already on the ground, and then I can collect the ball. He gets up and collects the ball. Yeah, that's ridiculous. Maybe ultimately good that happens because a few words I will say about it. I've also found it a very light penalty. I can see a little bit where it comes from. In certain angles, it looks worse than others as well. It's difficult. It's a difficult one, but I'm also at least leaning very hard towards that should not be a penalty. But yeah, unfortunately for Union, that missed penalty also broke their rhythm a little bit. Not immediately. I think there were from both ends a few chances right after that, but after that the game died out for a little while. It picked up again, luckily in the second half, but definitely. Not the results I would have wanted. Anderlecht getting away with this one, and I feel like I have to say that a bit too often now lately. But I personally don't mind, but like for Anderlecht fans at least, I can imagine that's not the nicest thing to hear. But they Anderlecht holding on and nothing much more, and getting a bit lucky with both that missed penalty. Then once it was given, and Terro's shot, not bouncing in, but before the line, clearly before the line, of course, but still that finish that could have finished them. And I'm not sure how they would have managed to score if Union would have scored first as well. In this game, at least, it didn't really look. They had a few chances, of course, but in the event of Union going up front, I'm not sure if Anderlecht would have been able to fight back a lot there. Still no wins against Union in the Dunepark since the 70s, early 70s still, of course, as well. That's definitely still worth a mention, of course, always with the caveat, Union have not been around for most of that time. That's still the case. Maybe if we still do the podcast in 20 years and that stat is still alive, then we can change that narrative. So far, I guess it's still worth mentioning. Although it's been a while now, at least they had that's been 4 times now. No, more than 4 times because of the playoffs as well. So yeah, that definitely it's a psychological barrier as well to break there. But what else is there to say at the moment for Anderlecht? These things can change, but okay, it's worth mentioning the Donker coming back to his youth club, and and that he should be a reinforcement. But it's difficult to judge always with players that have not played that much in recent years. But that materialized quite quickly. It was to some a bit of a surprise that his name hasn't been mentioned earlier because of all the rumors they have had before, but then ultimately it happened in a few days' time. So I guess that opportunity came and they seized it. But so far, and this is a big so far, that's the main thing here, they have not brought in any offensive reinforcement yet.
The one interesting thing about all of that I'll throw into the mix here was something Brian Reimer said post-match. Aside from being very complimentary about Union and saying that they're a really good side and they're difficult to play against, particularly at home at the Marion at Duden Park, he did acknowledge publicly for the first time that they are not at the same level as they managed to reach last season. So he's acknowledging that now, and that's a slight change. He hadn't really spoke about it directly up till now. I'm glad you raised Dendonker, because I was going to ask you whether you felt he could make a difference. We're going to find out, but yeah, just a lot of questions in the mix there. That's for sure. The final Pro League game of the weekend, Joris, was at the Gildensporen. Kortrijk and St Truden finishing a goal apiece. Kortrijk probably the slightly better of the two sides, the one that probably got closer to winning it in the end. A game that's been described by many as a bit of a dull game, but actually I thought it was a little bit less dull than people are perhaps being a little bit unfair here. I actually thought, despite there being few clear chances in the game, it was a very open game, which made it kind of quite a good game to watch, actually, right until the very end. So it was actually a better game than I think a lot of people across the mainstream media are giving it credit for this weekend. St Truden ultimately happy-ish with a point. I think Ryan van Helden coming out post-match and saying, look, we need to be happy with the point in the end, considering the situation we're in. Christian Latanzio with even more interesting comments, somebody a bit like Dirk Kuyt, the two figures in which the vultures are circling conversely around at the moment. He seemed a bit more relaxed, going as far as to say, I'm not worried. I think the team is stabilising. So I suppose my first question for you is, do you see any evidence of stabilisation on St Truden's part?
Very much so. Well, I also saw it before. They lost 3 games and now they drew 3 games in a row. So that's maybe they will have 3 wins in a row the next 3 games, and then nobody's talking about any worries anymore. Most likely. Depends a bit on other teams' points haul in that time spell, but still, they did what they did then, that they could do then. But okay, I would not bet my money on that scenario, but in that sense, at least, yes. They also found the first point away from home. I don't really feel like it was completely undeserved either. I'll get to that as well. It was the first time they have scored for the first goal in the game as well. That was that's a good thing going for them. Unfortunately, they couldn't bring it over the line. Also worth mentioning in this game, I don't know how. I know Celtic has a lot of Japanese players at the moment, but I don't think they would be able to beat well, I'm not sure if it's a record, but it could be. Like there were 9 Japanese players on the pitch in the starting 22. So that's a lot outside of the J League itself, of course. Kortrijk, I feel like even though they could have won it, I still feel like they were maybe a bit too happy ultimately with the draw. Like they didn't really push hard enough. Ambrose did get a big chance, and hits the post quite late on in the game, of course. But apart from that, I'm not sure they maybe were too happy with the point, but it might also have to do with the situation both clubs are already in at this stage of the season. Not trying not to risk losing this one, and then bringing Sint-Truiden really back into the mix already. Now they are more in the mud than they would have been otherwise, of course. But still feel like it's not really the rebound they would have wanted after the losing last week. Well, even though it was just a narrow loss in score, but also after the what they put on what they put in that game and how that game panned out, they were not really in that one against Charleroi. But here I feel like they should win these kind of games. But okay, I think indeed the scenario of last season is still playing a little role and is still in the back of their head, and they will be happy with every point they'll be taking already at this stage of the season, and not losing against opponents that are likely to be among the bottom fighters together with them or not. We'll see. They should do more if they would not be on that. And as a conclusion for the whole game day, I already said it as well, actually, but just once more, like the distance between the 13th placed Kortrijk and I believe that is in Dinder at first plot is only 4 points. Partially, that is of course because of some teams not, or potentially at least not for teams not having played as many games as others with that game day. That was only half a game day, but still, everything is still playable for everyone. Only Beerschot and Sint-Truiden are hanging low already. But that could change if they go on a little run, which at the moment sounds unlikely. But it also means, on the one hand, I've already touched on a few teams missing their start. It might be a bit early to say that. Yes, okay. I guess if you just look at their own results, they missed their starts. But if you look at the bigger picture, everyone more or less has not necessarily missed their start, but nobody has run away, and everything is really still possible. Also at the bottom, even though these two sides are slacking a little bit, but just very, very competitive at the moment.
Yes, isn't it always? And speaking of those two at the bottom, Beerschot and Sint-Truiden, and vultures circling in different ways, they meet on the 21st of September, which is not too far away. And if both Dirk Kuyt and Christian Latanzio are still in post at that point, that's a massive fixture looming for both of those. And the loser of that tie, if there is one, would really fear for their post, I think, if the axe hasn't already fallen at some point before then. International breaks are always interesting things in some ways. I know a lot of fans feel ambivalent about international breaks, but it's such an interesting situation around both these clubs now to see which one might blink first, because the pressure's definitely rising, and Christian Latanzio is certainly giving Sint-Truiden, lots to think about, which is why I was keen to get your thoughts on whether you felt he was right about some early signs of stabilisation. I would expect maybe another one or two faces to come in there before the window closes. I'd be very surprised if that didn't happen at Sint-Truiden, just to give them that little bit of lift and to add a little bit of depth there. But yeah, mark your calendars for the 21st of September and that game between Beerschot and Sint-Truiden. That's a big one on the horizon. Before we move on to having a look at the action in the Challenger Pro League this weekend, Joris, we should have a little chat about the European draw this week. We now know the schedule and opponents for all Belgian sides, all 5 Belgian sides, making it through to the new league formats of European football. Club Brugge, of course, in the Champions League. They have 8 fixtures to navigate, 4 home ties, 4 away now. The home ties are Borussia Dortmund, Juventus, Aston Villa and Sporting Lisbon. And the away ties are Manchester City, AC Milan, Celtic and Sturm Graz. That's a little bit brutal, isn't it, Joris?
This will be very much a difficult stage, league stage for Brugge, like for Club Brugge. And yeah, I think you are happy that they play Celtic in the end. Not necessarily because of Celtic chances of winning that. I'll leave that in the middle, but just for that opportunity to watch them there. But apart from that, yeah, I believe it's projected that you need to get 10 points, around 10 points, to be in the playoff stage, at least with the, I guess, top 8. Yeah, I mean, nobody's expecting that. That would be a real surprise if they get there. But they projected 10 points for getting 24th spot. Yeah, I'm struggling to see where they will get them at the moment. They will definitely have to upset some teams for that. I guess Sturm Graz sounds doable, but of course they are having the double in Austria, but nonetheless they should be well within the means, and if they want to proceed to any stage of European football, they will have to. But all the others are difficult to see. Sporting Lisbon, it depends if they can repeat their form of last season. There's one Anderlecht link there already in Zeno the Bust, but there's actually it's remarkable how many Anderlecht links there are and are coming to Bruges in this fall and winter period. But I'm not going to list them all because I will forget people. Going on a tangent here, but yeah, tough draw. Hopefully they will be able to do something in these home games. And they will have to probably win 3 games, and then it's only a projection to get these 10 points. Maybe 9 points is enough. It's of course that, but winning 2 games is probably the least they need to do, and then I would think the 8 points might be enough. Even maybe if the results go well, and based on Football Manager as well a little bit. That it's still 4 games, winning 3 games or getting some results in at least 4 games. It's a tough ask.
I think I agree with you. I think the draw is difficult for them. But having said that, all of the games at this level are really difficult. It's what it's all about. And you look at that on paper and there's some really big ties there. But that's what you want at this level. And that's one of the reasons, one of the rewards for your consistency. And that's what champions generally have to contend with. On the Celtic fixture, particularly, I'm expecting to be at that game on media duties for the BFP, covering Club Brugge's visit to Glasgow. I'm looking forward to that for all sorts of conflicting reasons. That'll be a very special night for everybody concerned. So yeah, the BFP will be in attendance for that game at the end of November. Anderlecht, back to Anderlecht, who are, of course, in the Europa League. Again, they've got 8 fixtures, 4 home, 4 away. The home fixtures are Porto, Ferencváros, Ludogorets and Hoffenheim. And the away fixtures are Slavia Prague, Victoria Plzen, RFS from Latvia and Real Sociedad from Spain. My feeling about this one is this is slightly tricky.
It is. And I don't know if the same projection is there as well, if it's still around 10 points. But it all depends on Anderlecht as well themselves. I mean, on paper, it looks doable to get a lot of points without underestimating Ferencváros. But again, after these home games against them and Ludogorets, again, also not trying to underestimate them, but you would put their points there. Riga, you should count as a win. If they don't win that one, I think it's hopeless for all the other games as well. Anyway, again, with all due respect on the list, but yeah. And Porto is a tough one, but they get them at home. So yeah, Porto in Europe, it's always, especially in this stage of a competition, even though it's a different stage, home and away, they are a lot different, even though they are on a riot form, though. But that's it. Hoffenheim also depends a bit on how their season in the Bundesliga is going, most likely, how much weight they will put on the European fixtures. Victoria Pilsen, okay, another one where you could see them winning, but in their current level, I'm just not confident in Anderlecht at all. They narrowly beat Minsk as well twice. Yeah, I mean, albeit deservedly, I think, over the two games, but they were both horrible games to watch. I've seen little bits of it, not all of it, luckily for my eyes, but they were not the best watch. So yeah, Sociedad away. That's it's again same. It's not the top team in the league, so I guess that's also a bit of the fate of the Europa League at the moment. Like, how are the seasons of those teams going? But Sociedad, of course, had a lot of players that featured at the European Champion this summer. That doesn't necessarily make it an easy one. It's definitely not an easy one. But, well, how much weight do they put on the Europa League, given whatever state they might be in the league whenever they meet them? Yeah, so, well, on paper, initially I'd said I don't see them going through, or it's a tougher draw than everyone is saying. Looking at it now, I'm a bit more mild, but it really depends on their level and their own level.
Yeah, absolutely. I think raising their game is definitely something they're going to have to do to have an impact here. Speaking of raising their game, another side that did that domestically this weekend, of course, in Union Saint-Gilloise, they are also in the Europa League. Again, they have 8 fixtures of their own. Their 4 home fixtures are against Roma, Braga, who they are very familiar with, of course, having played very recently, Bodo Glimt and Nice. And the away fixtures are Rangers, Fenerbahce, Midtjylland, and Twente as well. I think this draw is really, really tough for them, actually. We know how good Union Saint-Gilloise are, and you shouldn't write them off because they are a good side, but I saw this draw, and actually I think in many ways for me, of the 5 sides, this was the one I looked at and thought, that's a really tough schedule.
Yep, that's very, very difficult. If I'm in a negative mood, then I could even see 0 points for them if they have the bad days on bad occasions. On the other hand, Bodo at home, at least, that's a good one. They do not have that one away. That hopefully that are 3 points. But apart from that, Braga, yeah, 2 seasons ago they beat them. But can they do it? I think they beat them and drew, or was it even twice beat them in the group stage? But okay, both sides have changed, so I'm not sure how much of a value we can add to those games. But of course, they will be referenced towards that game. Fenerbahce, Turkish sides are tricky, but actually they also, even more recently they played against them, and that was not a good experience for Union, unfortunately. Midtjylland, you would see maybe Twente as well. There's a lot of maybes, like much like Anderlecht maybe, but here where I feel like the maybes are more the 60-40 for the opponents. Then it doesn't by no means it's impossible, but they're all games you can lose on if you're either your opponent on a really good day or you are not on a top form. It's one way I look at rather than the other way around, which arguably still is the case as well, though. the tough draw will be. I think I'll still be a little surprised if they manage to get through this one. Well, and get through, I still only mean the playoff rounds. We'll see what happens there.
Yeah, and there is a fixture coming up for Union Saint-Gilloise there. Another one that I'm hoping to get along to, their game against Rangers, which we don't know yet, funnily enough. Rangers are obviously not playing their home games at Ibrox as they would normally at the moment. They're playing at Hampden due to works going on at Ibrox, but there is a possibility, and a reasonably strong possibility, they'll be back at Ibrox come January when that fixture comes round. So I should be at that game again on BFP media duties, taking in that one as well. The fourth Belgian side is Ghent, of course. They are in the Europa Conference League, which has 6 fixtures. The 3 home fixtures for Ghent are Molde, who, of course, defeated Cercle. They now find themselves in the Conference League. They've been drawn against Ghent. That's one of the home fixtures. The other home fixtures are Nicosia from Cyprus and Serbian side Vaca Topola. The away fixtures are Chelsea, Larne, who are Northern Irish, of course, and Lugano, the Swiss club. Very difficult to predict how Ghent might do here for a whole host of reasons that are uniquely Ghent related.
Obviously, Chelsea is a tough one. Nobody expecting points from them there, but it's only one game, of course. All the others, I mean, they can win, but with the caveat, it's Ghent, and it's Ghent in Europe, and yeah, we have mixed experiences with that over the course of the last few years. Of course, yeah, Molde already giving a warning sign with the defeating Cercle as well, of course, for sure. Yeah, the interesting one there is Larne, I guess. I think for their own draw, I think they basically are going on a British trip or something, round trip, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have it completely in my head, but something like that. That they have a funny draw to be the first time in the. It might be good for their travel costs expenses, though. Of course, being a small club, and still facing bigger opposition. So I mean, Gent should beat them, you would think. Lugano, tricky one. All the others, they should win. So outside of Chelsea, I think like Chelsea and Lugano, all the other ones are winnable. And Lugano is also winnable on a good day. But there I can see that they might drop some points.
Yeah, I think inside Ghent at the moment, I think they'll be quietly pretty content with that draw, and arguably the most content of all of the 5 Belgian sides. The 5th side in Europe, we've just mentioned Cercle Bruges, again in the Conference League. Their 6 fixtures include the 3 home games are against Basak Sahir, Hearts, otherwise known as Heart of Midlothian, another Scottish side, this time coming to Bruges, St Gallen, Swiss club, and the away fixtures are against Lask, Olympia Ljubljana, and Vikingar, who are of course from Iceland. Again, quite difficult to predict how Cercle might perform over this league stage, Joris, but that's just based on the fact that they've obviously had a tricky start to the season, and this is going to add to that with the scheduling concerns. But having spoke to some people inside Cercle over the last few days, I know they're really excited by this, and so they should be.
Yep, very tricky draw. Hearts, a bit of an unknown quantity. Shankland still providing the goods there, if I'm not mistaken. But more than that, unfortunately, I can't say much. Funny enough, I guess it's worth mentioning. Like Scott thought there were only two sides in Europe, Scottish sides in Europe anymore, and now 3 Belgian teams are playing 3 sides, Scottish sides. I think he had forgotten. With all respect, it was just an oversight, nothing else. That's one of the sides. I'll leave it in the middle. Which one? But Basak here difficult. Swiss sides difficult to judge as well. Vikingur would think they should win, but they're there for a reason. Olympia Ljubljana, again, you would think they should win that one, but they were causing riots again with Croatian fans. If I'm not mistaken, it was them last week, and then really they had a really good, convincing win to get into this stage. Lask, probably a tough ask for Cercle at the moment, but again, we'll see. But yeah, I'm also like anything Cercle can take is probably a bonus. Is how I see it. I think, and they should take some points, and hopefully it leads them to somewhere. But if they can manage to, I would be surprised positively if they would manage to get to the playoff stages.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a mixed bag for them, that draw, but it's something to look forward to, and contending with playing sometimes 2 games a week over a period of a number of weeks is the reward and the challenge of obviously the consistency from last season, and I think longer term, obviously, like with all clubs, not just Circle, it will help a lot of the young players at these clubs develop much quicker playing against in some cases a higher level of opposition, in some cases lower. It's a great thing for player development, as well as keeping you on your toes tactically as well as physically. Let's have a wee chat about the Challenger Pro League this weekend, Joris. We've reached match day 3. This weekend, Molenbeek won 2-1 against Eupen. Zulte beat Lokeren 1-0. Anderlecht Futures lost 2-1 to Raal. Patro Eisden and Club Next finished 2 apiece. RFC Liège and Beveren finished goalless. Young Genk lost 2-1 to Frank Baran. Liers lost very narrowly at the death in the big game of the weekend in many ways, losing 1-0 at home to Denza. And Serang lost 2-1 at home to Lommel, who got their first win of the season. So Denza are top on goal difference at the moment. Raal have started reasonably well, Joris, managing to do what Lokeren can't do at the moment, and that is rack up some points. As I was saying, Lommel also getting their first win of the season, which was really important for them, I think, being one of the sides that have kind of promised quite a lot coming into the season. A lot's expected of them. Lokeren remain rooted to the bottom. They've lost all 3 so far. The only side still to score, and they've conceded 6, so they are still struggling to adjust.
Yep, they definitely are. Well, admittedly, 4 of those 6 came in the same game, but still no goal scored. Early worrying signs and warning signs and alarm bells ringing for them already. Yeah, I haven't watched too much on the Challenger Pro League myself this week, I have to admit. Mirisola, I saw bits of Young Genk as well. Mirisola scoring 3 goals in a row, and now also had his contract renewed. Not only for Genk, but also for the Belgian future. And I hope he actually keeps on scoring, even though he's not a natural striker. But it seems to be evolving towards that position now, at least. And I saw Young Genk being very much in control of that game, but just being a little naive and getting themselves to sleep and throw away that game in 5 minutes, unfortunately, there. But all in all, still a good start for them. But and also a great goal from Campbell from Club Next this weekend. That's true. I didn't see that live, but I saw some highlights on that. Definitely worth to watch that one. Still like early days, of course, for conclusions.
Yeah, it is very early days. It's still too early, certainly, to read anything into anything at all, as much as we've been saying about the Pro League in many ways. Well, that's just about it for the week in Belgian football. Obviously, there'll be no BFP next week because of the international break. We have a couple of Nations Leagues fixtures coming up, Joris. On Friday evening, the Red Devils are at home. I should say at home, not literally at home. It is technically a home fixture, of course. They are due to play Israel, but because of the ongoing political and security situation, the game will not be played in Brussels or indeed anywhere in Belgium, despite a number of attempts. The game's actually going to be played in Hungary, in Debrecen. So that's happening on Friday evening. And then, of course, the second game over the weekend is on Monday evening, when the Red Devils play France, obviously the bigger of the 2 fixtures. Some interesting omissions from the squad. Joris, what's your feeling about these 2 fixtures? Do you see positive results?
Let's hope so. Interesting squad selection anyway. Good to see some new faces, I guess. even though some of them are controversial. But I do see some points in there. There should be some points. Otherwise, it will be even more pressure. And like the feeling around the national squad really needs to turn around quickly. Otherwise, yeah, the malaise is complete. And it still might, but that they really should win against Israel at least. Or dare I say they should just not play against Israel? But okay, I'm with this, that's not on a sportive level, but I guess that, and I'm sure it's not going to happen with the current personalities in the squad as we have, and in so on.
Yeah.
Well, we've seen these kind of things, these ethical things, but okay, I'll just whisper that.
Yeah. It's an interesting point you raised because, of course, we now know as well that the Palestinian FA have requested a ban for Israel, and FIFA are due to meet to at least discuss this. So this isn't going to go away. So the fixture on Friday is going to happen, but there may not be a return fixture. We just need to see actually what happens. But good luck to the Red Devils anyway over the course of those two fixtures. And of course, we'll be covering those games on our social media, particularly the X account as well. Also, good luck to the under-21s who over the weekend are due to play Kazakhstan as well. We mustn't forget about that. If you like what we're doing here at the BFP, and we know that many of you do, many of you with an ongoing interest in the Belgian football landscape, please do consider leaving us a little review on your podcast platform of choice. Equally, you can buy us a coffee. That goes a little way towards some of our production costs here at the BFP. You can find the link on our socials as well. Likewise, you can hunt down either myself, Joris, or Ben on social media if you want to pick up a particular point with us as well. And also drop us any listeners' questions you've got coming up for future episodes as well. As we were saying, there'll be no episode next week because of the international break. So we will be back with you soon, a couple of weeks, on another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast. So whatever you're up to, take care of yourself. And that includes you, Joris. I will speak to you very soon.
I definitely will speak to you as well.
Indeed, yeah, and hopefully we'll be speaking to everyone else too. So until the next episode of the Belgian Football Podcast, take care of yourself, everybody, and speak to you soon.